me give you something to ponder real quick. All right. Let me give you something to really sit back and think about. Dig deep into your mind when I asked you this, okay? So you built a brand, you showed up, you told your story, you posted the content, launched your podcast, maybe even got some people to slide in your DM saying, hey, bro, this was inspiring. Or, hey, ma'am, this was so inspiring that it moved me. But yet, you're still broke. Or worse, you're busy. You look successful. You got all the followers in the freaking world. You got the booming and bomb logo. Your bio sounds good, but your bank account is telling you broker than the people asking for money on the corner. Now, think about that. Now, how do you feel about that? Once you ponder, how do you feel? Well, let me tell you what nobody's talking about. See, most people build their brand around their personality instead of their positioning. They get famous in their circle, and broke is a joke. See, I say that because people want to look rich, but ain't rich. People go out and do they I've seen podcasts where people have literally spent thousands of dollars, I can't say millions, on a set. Broke is all outdoors. They famous. They in their circle, but they broke in real life. And here's the assumption that I need to interrupt to you right now. You do not need a massive freaking audience to monetize your brand. You need the right conversations, positioned the right way with the right people. So just stay with me, because today, I'm going to show you how to take your story, every scar, every struggle, every come up moment, and turn that into a brand that generates clients, currency, and most importantly, it generates the credibility on repeat. See, this is Podcast for Profits. And guess what? That starts now.
Welcome to Podcast for Profit, the show where podcasters become CEOs. I'm your host, Tony Porter, and every week I'm giving you the strategy, systems, and game you need to grow your audience, monetize your message, and build a 7-figure podcast business. No fluff, no cap, just real results. Let's get into it.
What up, good people? Welcome back to Podcast for Profits, the show where we stop trading time for likes and start turning your conversations into currency. Now, you know who I am. I'm your host, Mr. Tony Porter, and your podcast monetization strategist and business coach is in the building again. We want to say welcome, man. We got to say welcome. All right, today we're diving into one of the most personal topics. I can't say one of the top topics. I'm saying the most personal. And listen. The reason why I say this is so personal to me, because I learned this over time. See, I started podcasting back in 2017. I was building business after business, but I started podcasting back in 2017. And you got to understand, see, I come from the block. And when I say I come from the block, I mean I'm from the block. A lot of people who come from the block and try to go to the boardroom, they never make it to that person, that position. But I'm going to talk to you about how to build a brand around some conversation. See, what a lot of people don't want to hear, most conversations lead to millions and millions and dollars worth of deals. You have to understand that most conversations lead to millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of deals. And being a person from the block, that's exactly what I had to learn. I had to learn to leave one mentality alone and pick up another mentality. I had to learn to change my mindset to fit a different mantra. Now, before we start, let's get real about something. If you're a coach, consultant, or a service provider who's tired and tried the podcasting game and you steady doing it, and it feels like you are speaking to yourself into a void and you are ready to start generating some real clients, some real revenue, sit your behind down and pay attention. Because see, these strategies we're breaking down today, they're not theories. Most of your top podcasters in the world have done this. They use this. And I know this because I started studying the David Sands, the Brad Lees, the Amy Porterfields. I started studying the Pat Flynn's, the Joe Rogans. When you look at the ones who have top podcasts on TV and on YouTube right now, I studied them. I studied $1 million worth of game. Drink Champs. I enjoy watching Cam and Mace. I think their podcast is super dope and it's so funny. Like, they might not intentionally want it to be funny, but them two together, their chemistry on camera is just outstanding. And then I watched The Pivot. I watched All the Smoke and just picked up on my guys from UNC. Shout out to them Tar Heels. The Baja podcast with Ray Felton, Theo, and the guy from the, hey, trust me, no disrespect. The guy was a beast when he played at UConn as Charlie Villanueva. He used to give people fits. So shout out to those cats over there, man. And I do listen to I listen to Gilbert Arenas' podcast, man. I love these podcasts, all right? But we are here to give you the exact frameworks that these podcasts are using to help you turn your clients, your listeners, into paying clients on repeat for your podcast business. Now, here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to get into it, man. One of the main things we're going to talk about is why your story is the strongest sales asset and how to weaponize it to make it work. The difference between a personal brand and a positioning brand. And then we're going to figure out which one pays. We're going to also talk about how to turn every conversation on your podcast, on your social media, in your DMs into a client-generating machine. We're going to talk about the real reason people follow you but don't buy from you, all right? And we're going to talk about how to fix that. So get ready for that. And then we're going to talk about how to build your boardroom. And when I say we're building that, we got to talk about the credibility, starting from wherever you are right now. So let's get into it, all right? Let's not waste no time. So there are 3 core pillars that we need to discuss. And the first one we're going to talk about is your story. What I had to learn how to do is I had to learn how to stop hiding the block. Listen, I always thought that if I told my story, people would look at me in a different format, different direction. Right? I'm proud of where I'm from, West Side Louisville. I'm proud of that. Okay? You can't tell me nothing about the West Side, the South Side, or Portland without me having something in response. Proud to be from this area. But what they don't tell you is nowadays they want you to be genuine. See, you've been told to be polished, to sound professional, to not be too much of your past and start bringing that into your brand because people might not take you too seriously. Maybe that was back in the early 90s, maybe the early 2000s, but I'm here to tell you right now, that's exactly backwards. See, the block is the brand, and that's my brand. See, I grew up down West Louisville, like I told you. That's in Kentucky. And when I say Louisville, I mean the part of Louisville they don't put on that tourism brochure. If you come to any part of Louisville, they're going to talk about, hey, let's go downtown to Whiskey Road. And shout out to the cats who run Whiskey Road, man. I'm not bashing none of my city. What I'm saying is West Louisville is not on that map. See, I wasn't born with a business plan. Single mom, grandparents helped raise me. I wasn't handed that playbook that you get handed when you live out in the east side of town. We go to the east side of town sometimes, man, and we paying attention to these folk, man, and we looking at these $1 million homes, and we just in awe like, see, I'm from the area where the champ, the greatest of all time, grew up at. I went to that elementary school that the champ, the greatest of all time, went to. See, I was figuring it out on the fly. See, I was making moves with my homeboys, and I was failing fast, and I was learning slow. See, my first few ventures that I started, they failed so bad. A couple of them, I don't even remember why I started them. I started affiliate marketing. I made a little money. I got to the point where I said, maybe I need to start investing in myself. Then I built Snap Crackle Gourmet from nothing. I had no loan. You know what I had? I had a job. And my job was my bank. I didn't have a trust fund. I didn't have a mentor in my corner office. Started from scratch, street smarts, and figured out how to take and leverage what I learned growing up on the block and put that in my business. And then when I started podcasting, seriously started podcasting. See, in 2017, I didn't know what I was doing. It was a hobby. I was trying to learn how to build websites and podcasts at the same time. But I almost made the same mistake everyone else makes. See, I try to sound like the corporate people and not Tony. And that's what they don't tell you. They want you to sound corporate. Hey, you got to sound like this. You a lie. See, nobody cared how I sound. See, the moment I brought Louisville into this mic, the real stories, the real struggle, the real come up, that's when people started listening. That's when people started buying because people did not connect with me with my perfection. They connected with my progress. I ain't had no silver spoon. What I had was I had a block, I had a pot, and I knew how to get busy. That's it. I can't tell you nothing no different. And how I learned that was I came home from school. And the guy that used to coach me in youth football came and got me and said, I need you to help me coach these kids. Me being me, I ain't coaching no kids, man. I ain't got time for that. Get out there, never stop. 28 years later, still coaching. But other people that I was around was putting me in position for me to learn. All I had to do was open my ears. And it was two gentlemen. One was the president of WHAS. The other was an old gentleman that I had met working on one of my job sites. And he basically, the gentleman told me, young fella, you don't need to be working here. Let me talk to you for a second. Me being a knucklehead, I ain't want to hear it. So I listened, but I wasn't listening. Now, the reason I'm telling you this story is because this is the one thing I need you to walk away from with this particular segment. He told me that I needed to learn to stock. Didn't listen. He broke down to the fact that he owned in a cul-de-sac. And if you don't know what a cul-de-sac is, I'm going to give you a quick visual. It's when you're driving down the street and you turn into a side street, and that side street goes in and it makes a circle and you come right back out. All right. But it's got like maybe 8 to 10 houses in there. He owned every house on that cul-de-sac. A few years later, I ran into him in the mall. He remembered me. You do what I asked you to do, young fella? And that's when it clicked for me. Fast forward, I'm coaching football. And a couple of the guys that I'm coaching with, they're setting up to where we can get sponsorships. But they was like, hey, we're going to have this meeting. And I'll never forget this day. They told me, they said, show up to the meeting. Come as you are. And on shorts. Come as I am. What? Nah, they ain't had it. Come as you are. Another person was there. I ain't gonna say no name. He said, I'm gonna put on a purple suit. I looked at him like, girl, look like Barney, cuz. But all right, whatever. Long story short, I showed up to the meeting in some camo shorts, some Nike Air Max, a nice polo, because that's what I had on. Ever since then, me and the guy who was running the meeting have been cool. The other guy has disappeared into the realm of we don't know where he's at. So when I tell you that your story creates trust faster than any credibility you can buy, I didn't have to buy my credibility. See, a degree, it looks good on the wall. It goes a long way. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying a degree is bad. What I'm saying is a degree will get you into those exclusive areas. You know, I have a master's degree. I have a doctorate. I got a degree in street knowledge, but I got a degree. But my story was where I came from, what I overcame, and what I built. That's what gets me these clients, because the person listening to you right now, they got their own blocks, their own battles. And when they hear you, like they heard me telling my story, they believe their transformation is possible just as well as anyone else's transformation is possible. Understand this: story equals trust. Trust equals currency. Your personal history is a business asset. So you need to start using it. Now understand this: the most expensive thing you can do in your brand is hide where you come from. Because the people who need you the most are still standing in the same block you left. And if they can't see themselves in you, they'll never invest in themselves through you, man. Period. So if you're building a brand right now, today, and you're wondering how to tell your story in a way that actually converts, man, this is exactly what we start breaking down in the Podcasters Academy. That's the free school community that we have. I'll drop a link in the show notes. Man, you got to come in, introduce yourself, and start building. We just recently finished building this out. So you have to get involved, man. You have to get out there. And I noticed that. You have to get out there to be seen. But here's the thing. Knowing your story is the only step one. Or should I say, knowing your story is the only step for one. Because there's a huge difference between a story that makes people feel something and a story that makes people buy something. And that's exactly what we're getting into next. So here's what you got to understand: personality versus positioning. You got to know the difference or you're going to stay broke. This is that intelligent gut punch that you need to know about. See, here's a conversation I had with this client the other day. And I kid you not, it was so refreshing because we were sitting there talking and she said, I found you on Instagram. I'm thinking, all I was posting was clips on Instagram. I didn't even tell people I was coaching. And she reached out to me. She said, can you help me? Me being me, I said, who are you? And she said, oh, I'm sorry. She's a mother from, she's from Chicago. She said, I just want to talk about things that's going on in my city. And I said, oh, that's simple. Tell your story. And so we started talking. And I said, we was meeting on these weekly calls. I was just testing out my program. I said, listen, I'll help you for free. She said, no, I want to pay. I said, I'm testing out my program. So I'm going to help you out. It's a new program that I put together. She said, okay. And so I said, we started doing these weekly calls. I started giving her these action tips, and her stuff blew up. She's getting ready to record one day, and her phone rings, and it's her best friend. Girl, your podcast, they talk about you at work, and then. And she's like, well, I met this guy off Instagram. She's like, are you internet dating? She's like, no, he's coached me. And I start laughing. I said, okay. And she said, well, can he help me? Because I want to start a podcast in my field of hairstyling. She said, I don't know. I don't know if you could afford it. So she became an advocate and started pushing people my way. So what I did was I just took a group of people out of Chicago and started just walking them through steps to how they could start a podcast. It was just part of the coaching program that I was starting. But it was just so funny because one person clicked on my profile and reached out. And that was the beauty of it. All right, so if you notice, I said it started on Instagram, right? See, they've got their podcast. They had hundreds of followers. People love their content. They love what they was putting out, but they was barely generating any revenue. And once she started doing that, I asked her one question. Why do you help? And what specific problem with you talking about what's going on in your city do you solve? And when she gave me the answer, I knew she picked up on what I was doing. Not because they didn't know what they was doing. Not because they didn't have a vehicle to drive. They didn't know how to tell their story. So they started positioning themselves between their personal brand and their positioning. And so, like I said, when I first started the community, I was going back and forth trying to figure out, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But the stages people got to know. See, people knew who I was in the city. People knew my energy. My homeboy got an online radio station. I would just pop in while he was working, and he put me on air one day. But knowing me didn't pay my bills. So I had to start figuring out how I was going to get booked. And that's when the shift happened. When I stopped trying to be known and started making crystal clear who I was dealing with. See, I help coaches and consultants and service providers turn their podcast into a client-generated machine. Boom. That's it. The minute I got specific and the minute I told them folk from Chicago, that's when the right people started showing up, not only for my podcast, but for what they was doing. Not just followers. So, again, we tapped in the other day, and she started following, if you don't know his name is Jason Wojo. So he has a program that's a $27 low ticket offer, but he teaches you how to sell a digital product. Shorty killing it right now. And that's what made me feel good. And then again, I connect with people. Here in the city, I connect with people. I got my influencer for cologne. He's dropping the science. I need to get that in. I got my pest guy. He comes through. I'm great. Holler at one of the smartest plumbers I've ever met. And if you pay attention, I'm putting people on my show who are doing service providing. See, their positioning beats personality every single time. And when that's what you want to do, that's when the revenue starts to come through. See, personality gets you followers. Positioning gets you clients. You can have both. In fact, the most powerful brands have both. But positioning, that must come first. Personality amplifies it, all right? So your positioning is the answer to the 3 questions. Who specifically do you serve? What specific outcome do you produce? And why am I the most credible person to deliver that outcome? When you can answer that with no problem, you good. When your podcast answers those 3, and you can do that in the first 60 seconds before the music fades out, you stop being the entertainer and you started being the solution. And people pay for solutions. Now, they pay for entertainment too. Think I'm lying? Listen, I'm 54 years old, right? And I crunched the numbers on 2 of the summer's biggest tours nobody talked about in my genre. I listen to hip hop. NBA Youngboy. Some of y'all might not like his music. I've listened to a couple of tracks. My man was banking over $1 million a show. And we're not talking club venues. We're talking stadiums, okay? $1 million a show. Now, we're talking statistics. We got to talk this one here. Breezy Bowl. Chris Breezy. Shout out to Breezy. Shout out to Youngboy. But shout out to Breezy. My man's took, and I know for a fact, because I watched it online, people was paying $700, $2,000 for VIP. Chris Brown played, I think, MetLife Stadium. I bumped that. He played Atlanta twice. Phillips Arena. Phillips Arena probably hold about 25,000. Sold out. Chris Brown announced his tour. Sold out. See, he positioned himself as the young R&B king. Young boy has positioned himself with his age group as the young hip hop mogul. Okay. You got to understand that. You have to understand that. Breezy tour lasted a while. Everybody was going. Everybody's there. Everybody's doing this. I think Bryson Tiller was on there. Shout out to Bryson. He's from the Ville. Never met him. But once I get to that position to where I might see if I can't holler at him. I love to just talk business because music is a business. Now, the best that probably have ever done it, Taylor Swift, Beyonce. You talk country. I can't begin to name people like Garth Brooks, Ian Rhymes, Toby, all of these concerts. Listen, man, I'm going to tell you something, and we're going to keep it moving because I get excited when I start talking about music, genres, money. Podcast for Profits turns this into conversations into currency, right? Man, listen, Taylor Swift announced her concert, 25 minutes sold out. Not here, across the globe. We're going to be in this city on this day. We're going to be in this city on this day. Ticketmaster shut down. Beyonce came to Louisville to Papa John's Cardinal Stadium. I'm at work. I'm riding through. I see all the people. It's 12 o'clock. The show don't start till 8. They out there. The Beehive is in the building. Then me, I get to the crib and I'm looking at the news and they're interviewing people. Hello, I'm from Jaleo, England, and I come to see Beyonce. What? You flew to Louisville? Shout out to you, my guy. I brought my kids. Oh, my God. Can you imagine the ticket price that he paid for that? But the brand positioning is what got them there. See, I bet you I was like, where's he going with this? I went right there with it. See, I want you to understand that you can relate to what I'm saying. We're going to hit you with a little country. We're going to hit you with some pop. We're going to hit you with some R&B. We're going to hit you with some hip hop. Okay? But each one of the individuals that I spoke about put themselves in a brand positioning to where they position themselves as the go-to person in their genre. Then after that, their brand positioning turned into their personal brand, and that's where everything else took off. Here's what you need to do. You need to audit your brand right now. Can a stranger who's never met you, not one single time, land on your show and know exactly who you help and the results you get them in 60 seconds? If not, your positioning is the problem, not your content. See, you don't need more content. You need a clear positioning, my peoples. Every post, every episode, every reel that you put out without a sharp positioning is just noise in your face with the egg sitting there frying. So one of the first things I worked on and one of the first things we work on is called the foundation. The next big thing we talk about in the Podcasters Academy is your magnetic messaging framework. You got to get crystal clear on your positioning. So every piece of content you create is doing double duty, building your brand and building your client pipeline. Jump in, join for free. I'm going to leave the link in the show notes. So now you've got your story dialed in. Your positioning is locked tight. But what do most people leave the money at on the table? They can't convert a conversation into a client. This is the final piece. And this is the most valuable thing that you got to understand. You got to have a conversational funnel. This is where every interaction that you could have becomes currency. Give them the framework they can use today. This is it. This is the piece that separates people who have podcasts as a hobby from people who have podcasts as a business. See, most people treat conversations like events. Something happens, someone messages you. You have a great podcast interview. Someone comments on your post and then nothing. The conversation ends and life moves on. Guess what? You still broke as hell. No revenue. So I want you to start testing, or should I say, I want you to start treating every conversation like the beginning of a funnel. Because see, in my journey early on, I was having great conversations on the show. My guest was dope. Topics was on point. People were responding. I wasn't making no money. Why? Because guess what? I didn't have a system. I had the vibes, not the vehicle. I had no system. The shift happened when I started mapping my conversational, touch points. Every single episode became the door. Every DM became the on-ramp. Every comment became an invitation. See, I built a system. I didn't build for hope. I turned everything around me. Those conversations, they became client relationships. So here's how the conversational funnel works. Step one, you attract. Your podcast episode, your reel, your post, man, that pulls them into you. You got the problem that they recognize. You the person that they want to solve that with your content. That's how you started doing it. That's how they first found you. All right. Now you engage. They comment, DM, or respond. Hey, you need to return the favor. This is the most important moment. You reply with value, not a pitch. Value. You become real to them. And then you extend an invitation. Hey, come join the Podcasters Academy. Download the client generated blueprint. Join the challenge. All right. We want to give you everything that you can have. And then the next step, without asking, is the money. And that's when you start converting. See, inside the community, we have them calls. We could DM you, just shoot you a message, present you a paid offer. Now that you trust me, or you trust whoever you're dealing with, or they trust you, they know you, they've already received value from you. That's the easy part. See, that's the magic, the system. We there. All right. So map out your first 10 conversations where they go and be like, okay. And then figure out, do you have a step 2? Do you have a step 3 built out? If not, this is where you're leaving the revenue at. So your podcast is not a content machine. It's a conversation machine. And you have to realize that. Okay? You really have to realize that. And if every conversation doesn't have a clear next step, you're not running a business. You're running an elaborate hobby. So the conversation to currency checklist, we're going to give it to you too. All right? It's literally a step-by-step system that we mapped out. We mapped it out. It's available inside the Podcasters Academy. What you got to do, you got to join it. You have to join it. We're giving you a ton of free information to help you get started. You sitting around not getting paid, not building your dream lifestyle, that doesn't work. Don't sleep. Link will be in the show notes. All right. Now, I have clients who went from 0 clients from their podcast to booking 3 to 4 high ticket clients in a month. Not from going viral, not from blowing up overnight, but what they did was they built the exact system. They used it. When you stop hoping people find you and start building a path for them to reach you, everything changes. All right. So here's what you got to do. We've covered a lot of ground today, and I need you to not let it be just a good episode. You listen to it and you can't forget about it at lunchtime. Here's what I need you to do. We just talked about it. Now turn this action into results. That's all I need you to do. First, grab the conversation to currency checklist, the framework, the exact framework I just laid out, turned into a simple action guide. It's free. It's inside the academy. All right. Second, if you don't have the client generated podcast blueprint yet, grab it. It's the roadmap from podcasting for fun to podcasting for profit. And again, third, join the Podcasters Academy on School. It's completely free. It's a community of coaches, consultants, and service providers. All right, who are serious about building their personal brand, not just their reach. You feel me? This is where I show up, where I drop free trainings, where I give you real game that gets you played. All right, and if you're ready to level up, that's even better. So let's just get in the community before we talk about anything else, because a lot of times you have dope content, you just don't know how to position yourself. So everything I just mentioned, links will be in the show notes. If you're not a part of the community, you got to be a part of the community, because that's where everything sits at. You understand? But guess what? That's a wrap for Podcast for Profits episode today. Here's what I need you to remember. You don't come this far to play small. You just don't. It can't happen. You don't build the brand, launch the show, show up every week just to generate likes. That's not what this is about. You show up to create change in your life, in your business, and in the lives of every person your work touches. If the block sharpens you, that's your credibility. The boardroom you're building towards, that's your destination. And every conversation you have between here and there, that's your currency. Man, don't forget to subscribe. Man, rate the show. 5 stars is even better than hitting home runs with Homer Simpson. Man, share the episode with somebody in your network who needs to hear this. Listen, man, I'm Tony over here for Podcast for Profits. We out of here, man. We turn conversations into currency. Now go turn yours. Peace.
Thanks for tuning in to Podcast for Profit. If you got value today, share this episode with a creator who's ready to level up. And make sure you hit follow so you never miss the moves we're making. If you're serious about turning your podcast into a business, tap the link in the show notes to join the Solo Empire